The week ahead on The Bold and the Beautiful arrives with the kind of charged anticipation that this series has always thrived on. The sense that something seemingly small, a single meeting, a glance held too long, an outburst of anger in a hallway, can ripple outward and unsettle an entire family legacy. According to media teases and promotional footage, R.J. Forrester is finally set to come face to face with Dylan, a woman whose reputation precedes her and whose presence in Los Angeles has already stirred suspicion, judgment, and fascination in equal measure. This encounter is not framed as gentle or accidental. The promo suggests fury and urgency, Dylan storming directly toward the handsome Forrester heir as if driven by a mixture of desperation and resolve, her anger less about him personally than about the world he represents. A world of privilege, beauty, and security that stands in stark contrast to her own precarious existence. The show has always understood that its most potent drama lies not merely in romance but in collision. And here, collision is the word that best describes what happens when RJ's sheltered yet emotionally bruised interior life meets Dylan's raw, volatile edge. In the clip itself, there is an almost disarming tonal contrast. Bryan Nicoletti flashes a flirtatious smile, the kind that suggests ease, charm, and a natural openness to connection, while Dylan's energy is anything but light. The question immediately posed to the audience is whether this smile is a shield, a reflex learned by someone raised to navigate both affection and scrutiny, or a genuine spark ignited by the unexpected presence of a woman who does not soften herself to fit into the polished corridors of Forrester Creations. Dylan, described as a homeless art teacher, carries layers of contradiction within her very title: educator without a home, creative spirit without stability, and the idea that such a figure might cross paths romantically with a Forrester heir feels both provocative and deeply aligned with the show's long tradition of pairing wealth with vulnerability, glamour with grit. On paper, RJ and Dylan are technically free to explore whatever connection arises between them. Both are single, unbound by current romantic commitments, at least in the strictest sense. Yet the absence of official ties does not equate to emotional availability. And the narrative tension lies precisely in that gap. Since the recast RJ arrived in Los Angeles, leaks and spoilers have suggested a slow-burn flirtation between him and Elektra Forrester at the office, the kind of workplace chemistry that unfolds through shared glances and unfinished sentences rather than grand declarations. Nicoletti himself has hinted that Elektra could eventually become RJ's love interest, even revealing that producers arranged chemistry tests between him and Lania Grace, a behind-the-scenes detail that invites viewers to speculate about long-term plans. But the present reality complicates that possibility. Elektra is not unattached. Her heart, or at least her loyalty, currently belongs elsewhere, creating a quiet but significant barrier that prevents RJ from stepping fully into whatever feelings might be developing between them. This unresolved tension leaves RJ in an emotional limbo, open enough to be drawn toward someone new yet cautious enough to hesitate before committing to any path that could lead to pain or betrayal. Into this uncertainty steps Dylan, propelled not by flirtation but by need. Her anger in the promo does not read as random. It feels purposeful, as though she has reached a breaking point and chosen confrontation as her only remaining language. The series has often used anger as a doorway to intimacy, allowing characters to see each other stripped of pretense. And it is easy to imagine RJ responding not with defensiveness but with curiosity, perhaps even empathy. Brooke Logan, ever the romantic optimist and protective mother, has been encouraging her son to embrace dating in Hollywood, to explore life beyond the shadow of past heartbreak. Brooke understands better than most how love can both wound and heal, and her advice carries the weight of her own turbulent history. From her perspective, Dylan could represent possibility, a chance for RJ to rediscover joy, connection, and creative inspiration with someone who exists far outside the carefully curated Forrester bubble. What makes this potential pairing particularly intriguing is how much RJ and Dylan may share beneath their surface differences. Longtime viewers will remember that before Luna Nozawa descended into infamy as a serial killer, she was framed as the love of RJ's life, the person who understood him most deeply and whom he trusted without reservation. The devastation of Luna's transformation from beloved partner to monstrous figure left RJ with scars that have yet to fully heal, shaping his relationship to intimacy and trust. Dylan, too, carries the weight of a violent past, having killed her former girlfriend under circumstances that remain morally and emotionally complex. The show's suggestion that RJ and Dylan might bond over shared trauma is both unsettling and compelling, raising questions about whether mutual pain can foster genuine understanding or whether it risks trapping both individuals in a cycle of unresolved guilt and fear. Yet even as this emotional parallel invites sympathy, it also opens the door to darker interpretations. Whispers within the narrative suggest that Dylan may not be entirely sincere in her approach to RJ. That she could be using his name, his status, or his influence as a shield against the relentless judgment she faces from others in the Forrester orbit. Ivy Forrester, in particular, is determined to drive Dylan out of town, deeming her improper, unsuitable, and fundamentally incompatible with the image Ivy believes the Forrester family must maintain. Ivy's hostility is not subtle. It is rooted in a protective instinct that borders on possessiveness, a belief that she alone understands what is best for her family and its reputation. To Ivy, Dylan is chaos incarnate, a destabilizing force who threatens to expose cracks in the pristine facade of Forrester life. The pressure intensifies when one considers Dylan's complicated feelings for Will Spencer Jr. Her fascination with Will has been clear, charged with longing and aspiration, as if he represents not just romantic desire but access to a life of comfort and legitimacy. However, Ivy's efforts to evict Dylan from the garage apartment jeopardize this fantasy. Without a stable place to live, Dylan's dreams of elegant dinners and carefree dances with Will dissolve into impossibility. In this context, RJ emerges as both refuge and opportunity, someone whose affection could offer safety, acceptance, and perhaps even leverage against those who seek to erase her presence from the city. The moral ambiguity here is unmistakable. Is Dylan reaching out to RJ because she sees him as a kindred spirit? Or because she recognizes the power his surname carries? The show does not rush to answer this question, instead allowing it to linger, to haunt each interaction between the two characters. RJ, for his part, is not naive. The pain inflicted by Luna has sharpened his instincts, making him wary of being idealized or exploited. At the same time, his innate compassion, nurtured by Brooke and shaped by his own artistic sensibilities, draws him toward people who exist on the margins, who challenge him to see the world beyond inherited privilege. Dylan's status as a homeless art teacher speaks directly to this side of him, offering a mirror that reflects both his creative passions and his unacknowledged guilt over the ease of his own life. As Valentine's Day approaches within the show's timeline, the stakes of this potential romance grow higher. The holiday, traditionally associated with idealized love and grand gestures, becomes a litmus test for authenticity. Could Dylan truly be the right partner for a Forrester heir on such a symbolic day? Or would their pairing feel like a provocation, a statement rather than a sentiment? For RJ, the question is less about public perception and more about personal truth. He must decide whether opening his heart again is an act of courage or folly. Whether the comfort he feels in Dylan's presence is rooted in genuine connection or merely in shared pain. From a narrative standpoint, the writers are clearly positioning this storyline as a crossroads, one that forces multiple characters to confront their assumptions and insecurities. Ivy's crusade against Dylan reveals her fear of losing control. Elektra's continued relationship elsewhere underscores the limits of emotional timing, and Brooke's encouragement highlights the generational cycle of hope and heartbreak that defines the Forrester family. Dylan herself stands at the center of this storm, a figure both vulnerable and formidable, whose choices will determine whether she remains a transient presence or becomes a catalyst for lasting change. Ultimately, the question of whether RJ and Dylan will develop real feelings for each other cannot be separated from the broader themes the show has always explored: the tension between appearance and reality, the possibility of redemption, and the enduring human desire to be seen and loved for who one truly is. Dylan may indeed be using RJ as a means of escape from Ivy's harassment, but that does not preclude the emergence of authentic emotion along the way. Conversely, RJ's openness to Dylan may stem from empathy and attraction, yet it also carries the risk of repeating past mistakes, of confusing intensity with intimacy. As viewers watch this storyline unfold, they are invited not merely to root for or against a pairing, but to sit with the discomfort of uncertainty. Love on the bold and the beautiful has never been simple, and that complexity is precisely what gives it resonance. Whether Dylan becomes RJ's Valentine, his cautionary tale, or something far more complicated, their meeting promises to illuminate the fragile line between salvation and self-deception, reminding us that in this world of glamour and grief, the heart is always the most dangerous territory of all. The night Ridge set out for Il Giardino carried the weight of every unresolved wound he had tried to bury beneath years of pride, ambition, and carefully curated distance. The city lights blurred past his windshield as anger tightened around his chest. Not the hot, reckless fury of a man looking for a fight, but the colder, more dangerous resolve of someone who believed he finally held a truth sharp enough to cut through every lie that had suffocated him for years. Whatever secret Deacon had been keeping, Whatever shadow had crept too close to Brooke and Taylor, Ridge had convinced himself that confronting it head-on was the only way to reclaim control. To restore order to a life that felt increasingly dictated by other people's choices. His hands clenched around the steering wheel as if gripping the past itself. Every mile pulling him further away from restraint and deeper into obsession. The phone vibrated relentlessly beside him, its glow flashing Brooke's name, then Taylor's, over and over. Like twin beacons of warning he refused to heed. Brooke's voice, when he finally answered, was strained with fear, pleading with him to slow down, to turn around, to let whatever this was wait until morning. She knew that tone in him, the one that meant he was already halfway past reason, and it terrified her because she had seen where it led before. Shattered trust, scorched earth decisions, damage no apology could undo. Taylor's call followed moments later, calmer but no less urgent, her words measured yet trembling beneath the surface, reminding him that anger had never brought him peace, only loss. Ridge listened, barely responding, his mind already racing ahead to Il Giardino, to Deacon's face when the truth was finally dragged into the open. He promised nothing, offered no reassurance, and when the road ahead darkened into a long, empty stretch, he silenced the phone altogether. The crash came without warning, a violent interruption to his spiraling thoughts. One moment the road was clear, the next a flash of headlights, a sharp swerve, tires screaming against asphalt, and then the sickening sensation of weightlessness as the car spun out of control. Metal shrieked against pavement, glass exploded into a storm of fragments, and the world turned upside down in a blur of motion and sound. When the car finally came to rest, overturned and smoking beneath the indifferent stars, the silence that followed was almost worse than the impact itself. Ridge lay suspended by his seatbelt, blood trickling down his temple, consciousness flickering in and out as darkness closed in like a curtain falling too soon. By the time paramedics arrived, the road was slick with rain and flashing lights cut through the night, painting the wreckage in alternating red and blue. Ridge was rushed to the hospital, his injuries severe enough to strip away any illusion of invincibility he had ever clung to. Word spread quickly, and Brooke and Taylor arrived almost simultaneously, their rivalry forgotten the instant they saw him wheeled past. Pale and unresponsive, his life suddenly reduced to the steady beep of machines and the hurried voices of doctors. They sat together in the waiting room, united by fear, their shared history pressing in on them from all sides as memories of loving him, losing him, and loving him again replayed in relentless loops. Every minute stretched into an eternity, each unanswered question gnawing at them until the air itself felt unbearable. When the doctor finally emerged, his expression grave yet cautiously hopeful, the relief that washed over them was sharp enough to bring tears. Ridge had survived the surgery, he explained, and while his condition was still critical, there was reason to believe he would pull through. But then came the caveat, the complication that shifted the ground beneath their feet once more. Ridge had woken briefly, disoriented and confused, unable to recall the events leading up to the accident or even recognize where he was. He had murmured two names, faintly and without clarity, Brooke and Taylor, before slipping back into unconsciousness. Those names, spoken without context or recognition, echoed in Brooke and Taylor's minds like a cruel riddle, offering hope and devastation in equal measure. When Ridge finally regained consciousness for good, the moment they had both been dreading arrived with devastating force. Brooke stood at his bedside first, her heart pounding as she searched his eyes for any sign of familiarity, any spark of recognition. Taylor hovered just behind her, bracing herself for whatever came next. Ridge's gaze moved between them slowly, curiously, as if they were strangers whose faces seemed oddly familiar yet entirely out of reach. Confusion furrowed his brow, his voice hesitant when he asked who they were, why they looked at him with such intensity, such pain. The words struck like physical blows, leaving Brooke breathless and Taylor gripping the edge of the bed to steady herself. In that instant, the man they both loved felt farther away than he had ever been. Not lost to another woman or another choice, but to a void where memory itself had been erased. Days passed in a haze of whispered conversations and restrained tears as Brooke and Taylor took turns at Ridge's bedside, telling him fragments of his life, careful not to overwhelm him yet desperate to anchor him to something familiar. They spoke of his work, his children, the passions that had defined him, but when it came to their own places in his heart, words failed them. They could not bring themselves to explain decades of love, betrayal, reconciliation, and heartbreak, fearing that such a history might crush him rather than heal him. Ridge listened politely, absorbing their stories without emotional connection, nodding as if committing facts to memory rather than reclaiming pieces of his soul. It was during this fragile period that Luna entered his life, A young nurse whose presence seemed almost surreal against the sterile backdrop of the hospital. She was attentive without being intrusive, gentle in a way that felt instinctive rather than practiced. There was something about her that stirred a faint sense of déjà vu in Brooke the first time she saw her standing at Ridge's bedside, a haunting resemblance to the woman she herself had once been. Hopeful, unburdened, untouched by years of regret. Luna spoke to Ridge softly, never pressing him to remember, never reminding him of what he had lost. Instead, she focused on the present, on his comfort, on small moments of calm that felt like gifts amid the chaos of his fractured mind. Ridge found himself drawn to her almost immediately, not with the intensity of passion, but with the quiet relief of someone who had finally found solid ground. With Luna, there were no expectations, no history demanding to be honored or explained. She accepted him exactly as he was in that moment, a man piecing himself back together one breath at a time. As days turned into weeks, her presence became a constant, a soothing rhythm that anchored him when confusion threatened to overwhelm him. He trusted her instinctively, sharing thoughts and fears he could not articulate to anyone else, feeling a peace he could not remember ever having known. Brooke and Taylor watched this bond form with a mixture of gratitude and dread. On one hand, they were relieved that someone was helping Ridge heal, that he was not alone in his vulnerability. On the other, they could not ignore the growing sense that Luna was becoming more than a caretaker, that she was quietly filling the space they no longer occupied in his heart. Their own interactions with Ridge remained strained, marked by awkward conversations and unspoken longing, as if they were auditioning for roles they had once played effortlessly. Every smile he offered Luna felt like a reminder of what they had lost. Not through choice or betrayal, but through cruel chance. Faced with the possibility of losing him forever, Brooke and Taylor made an unspoken pact to work together, setting aside decades of rivalry in favor of a shared goal, helping Ridge reclaim his memories and, with them, his love. They researched amnesia late into the night, consulted specialists, and carefully planned moments designed to trigger recognition. Familiar music, cherished photographs, visits from loved ones who might spark something dormant within him. They approached this mission with cautious hope, aware that pushing too hard could do more harm than good, yet unable to stand by while another woman claimed the future they had fought so hard to preserve. Unbeknownst to them, Luna was weaving her own narrative, one that placed her firmly at the center of Ridge's emerging sense of self. She spoke of his past often, but always selectively, framing stories in ways that emphasized his independence, his desire for simplicity, his weariness with complicated relationships. She painted Brooke and Taylor as important figures. Yes, but ones associated with turmoil and pain, subtly steering him toward the belief that peace lay in moving forward rather than looking back. Her words were never overtly manipulative, but their cumulative effect was undeniable, reinforcing the comfort he found in her presence and the unease he felt around the women who carried the weight of his former life. As Ridge's strength returned, so did his sense of agency, and with it, the need to define his future on his own terms. He began to question whether reclaiming his memories was truly necessary, whether the man he had been was someone he wanted to be again. The past, as it was presented to him, seemed heavy with conflict and regret, while the present offered clarity and calm. Luna, ever patient, encouraged him to listen to his instincts, to choose what felt right rather than what others expected of him. The tension reached its breaking point on a quiet evening when Brooke and Taylor arrived together, armed with one final attempt to break through the wall between them and the man they loved. They brought with them a collection of memories too powerful to ignore, each item a testament to the life Ridge had built with them, to the love that had endured through countless storms. As they spoke, emotion crackling in the air, Ridge felt a familiar pressure building behind his eyes, as if something deep within him was stirring, fighting to be remembered. For a moment, hope flared in Brooke's chest, and Taylor dared to believe that this was it, that the man they had lost was finally finding his way home. But before that fragile moment could solidify, Luna stepped forward, her presence a gentle interruption that shifted the atmosphere entirely. She took Ridge's hand, grounding him, reminding him of the peace he felt now, of the choice he had to define himself anew. The memories Brooke and Taylor offered clashed violently with the calm Luna represented, leaving Ridge overwhelmed and uncertain, faced with three women whose lives were irrevocably intertwined with his own. He made a decision that stunned them all. With quiet certainty, Ridge tightened his grip on Luna's hand and declared that she was the woman he wanted by his side, the one who made him feel whole in a way nothing else could. The words landed like a final verdict, leaving Brooke and Taylor frozen in disbelief, their carefully laid plans unraveling in an instant. Luna met their gaze with an expression that was neither triumphant nor apologetic, simply resolute, as if this outcome had been inevitable from the moment she first stepped into Ridge's room. As the episode faded to black, the image of Ridge and Luna together lingered, a tableau of new beginnings forged from the ashes of forgotten love. Brooke and Taylor stood in the shadows, united once more by loss, forced to confront the possibility that some battles cannot be won, no matter how deep the history or how strong the love. And somewhere beneath the surface of Ridge's calm exterior, the echoes of a past he no longer remembered stirred restlessly, waiting for a reckoning that might yet come, promising that the story was far from over.